Welcome to the Krinzman Property Playbook, where we dive deep into the heart of South Florida's real estate scene. I'm your host, Matthew Krinzman, here to guide you through the strategies, insights, and community connections that make buying and selling real estate a science. If you're looking to move beyond the basics, build trusted relationships, and grow your understanding of this competitive market, you're in the right place. Every episode, I'll be bringing on local pros, from attorneys to contractors, to give you the inside scoop on what it really takes to succeed in real estate. So whether you're an investor, buyer, or just curious about the market, let's kick things off and get you one step closer to your real estate goals. Welcome to the Playbook. Good morning, good afternoon, whoever is listening or watching it, depending on the time you're watching. Welcome to the Krinzman Property Playbook. I am Matthew Krinzman. I am a broker associate here in South Florida with Sotheby's International Realty. And today I have Daniel Fisker joining me, a colleague at Sotheby's International Realty. And welcome to the show, Daniel.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Daniel, we've gotten to know each other for a couple of years, right? And since you've joined Sotheby's, but I'd like to hear more about your background, how you came to the real estate world and how you became a real estate, is like we call him at Sotheby's global advisor. So how did that
global
all
real
come
estate
together?
Advisor.
Yes. I left out the real estate part, but I thought that was assumed, but I never assume. So, tell us about the journey. Tell us how you got to, to this point in your life.
All right. Well, I grew up in Canada, as you probably know.
Yes.
And while growing up, my family was very active in real estate. We moved every 7 years was the longest we stayed in a house. So we always did, my mother and father always did these great projects on the home so that they could, increase their property position every move. And that did really well for them. And, later in life, I was more involved on those things. And with my interior design business, also improving the appearance of a lot of their properties. And that's basically what we were doing when we arrived in Florida back in 2019, 2020.
Okay.
But in Florida,
so you were right ahead of the curve on the COVID.
Yeah. So my wife and I we planned our move down here in 2017, 2018. And then we bought a property here in 2019. And then we had a baby in 2019. So we were not in a super rush to leave up north. But then COVID happened, and I had opened my business here, and my business was interior design, and I was working with realtors doing essentially improving homes, like staging them, but they were staged on a very high level. So it would be an interior design project for a property to make it presentable and ready for sale. And that's pretty much the entry for me into real estate. We worked on some really great projects. We broke some records on them. And then being so interested in the market, understanding like where my projects were coming from, that led me really to being a professional in the industry. A lot of my colleagues and contacts visiting, and they were like, wow, you have such a great knowledge of real estate with your curiosity. You should really be in the business. And so I took that as an opportunity to get my license in 2023. And then when looking for a brokerage, I interviewed a few brokerages. And the one that had the most fit for my professional background was Sotheby's International Realty. Oh, yeah. And they also, when I presented my background, they also understood how I could apply that properly to the business, especially being somebody not experienced in real estate, but experienced in entrepreneurialism, which is a huge part of real estate.
100%, especially on the real estate agent side. We are, essentially work for ourselves. It's our business. It's a business within the business, right? It's like everyone, every agent we are our business. This is what we do. If we happen to be under a brand such as Sotheby's International Realty, which, gives us the support to help with the business. Everyone has their niche and everyone has what they like to do in real estate. But as far, when it comes to being an agent, whether it be residential or it be super high end luxury or, starter homes, first time buyers, or, or the commercial side as well. So, and, I too have been with the company since 2020. Sorry. was it 2020? I don't remember anymore. I have to ask Steve, when I joined. But, I got absorbed by them, because they bought the company I was with originally.
Yeah.
And so I was impressed enough to stay. And I'm glad, to be aligned with the Sotheby's brand. And that it's definitely helpful. I mean, look, in this business, there's a company for everyone, and which is the nice thing about the real estate business is that any agent can find a home where they're comfortable with. And obviously you found your home here at One Sotheby's, and as I did as well. But, so you went from the interior design business, and then you went into sales, and which is quite the leap. I mean, it's a leap in that you left what you've been doing for a long time. Now you're starting something new. So when you decided to get into the real estate sales side and be an advisor, a global advisor at that, Sotheby's likes to call us, what was that transition like for you?
Well, like any new business, I mean, of course, it was a challenge and I was definitely up for it. But part of my interior design business also for the last, almost 20 years was doing B2B sales with furniture brands from Europe, from Italy and Denmark, and also Brazil, and managing those B2B clients, and then having interior design showrooms here and also private clients as my clientele. So my business had a lot of moving parts and a lot of different levels of dynamic collaboration required to make things work. And we also handled the logistics. I have a logistics background also from my family business that my father started back in 1983, and I worked in as a young 20-year-old quite a lot. But logistics have always been in my blood, so that was very helpful in that business. But jumping into real estate, people outside of the business always talk about real estate brokerages and if they give you leads and things like that. And real estate brokerages really do not give you leads. That's a big misconception. You have to find your own. But having been in business on my own for so long, I was pretty good at finding leads here and there in different ways. But the big transition certainly was generating activity. So of course I look to where I live. The closest leads I have would be my neighbors. And thankfully all my neighbors embraced me quite well. And I've done a lot of activity exactly where I live. And that's been great. Yeah, that's always important. Be friendly with your neighbors, because that's that's a great source of business down the road. I mean, not just if they ever want to decide to sell or lease their own property in your community. They have friends, they have family, they have acquaintances, they have associates, and they get to know you on that level. They're like, hey, you become a great recommendation for them. And our business is a lot of it is referral based. Obviously, this is based on how we like and trust. Exactly. It's huge for that. 100%. And so where do we've talked a lot lately, and I've come to you a few times over, the new construction, new development side of the business, which is a huge component of the South Florida real estate world. There's a new development every single day being announced. They're coming out, there's cranes all over the place. I just got an email today about a new project that you can't keep track. I mean, we have our own under One Sotheby's, and there's God knows how many outside of what our own company has. So you've found a niche, or have you found your zone in this? How did you come to decide, all right, I'm going to really dive deep into this pre-construction new development world and be a resource for my clients, my customers, and also for other agents. So how did that come about for you? And what do you look for? Well, part of being a new agent is, you have to be curious and understand what's going on in the market. And one of the great places to do that is visiting these pre-construction projects. And I do have a strong curiosity in general. So I would look up a new project, then I would look at who the developer is, what they've done, to understand the profile and basically the pedigree of the intended final result. Right. And then visiting the sales center, then of course the sales team represents the project. So especially if you're bringing a client to a sales center, you want to be sure that the client's going to be handled in the way that they'd like to be handled. So that's important also. And then finally, the sales center itself, that's going to represent the project thoroughly. with my interiors background, looking at, all the materials that are being involved in the projects and any furniture that's being provided, how the delivery goes, things like that. It's very important. So the higher level projects typically have, a much more premium offering in terms of the sales center.
Right.
And that gives clients a really good confidence to move forward on something, because they might be looking at something that's like $4,000 a square foot that doesn't exist yet. And they're essentially paying a contribution for it to exist, essentially. So you're basically, selling a future tangible based on a current intangible. But based on all the moving parts, that is what gives people the confidence to move forward on them. And then, your job, obviously, as a global real estate advisor, is to understand the market and be able to convey to your client that, yes, this is a good deal. No, this is not a good deal. I have something that you might like better. Just being able to provide options. And also, as a new agent, if you don't have a lot of listings to manage, you have a bit of time on your hands. And one of those things you can do is visit these new developments.
Right.
And they're always happy to have new agents come in and make contact and establish and develop a relationship and, essentially have you as a salesperson for them.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think what you're saying also applies to those of us who've been in the business for a long time as well. I mean, we have, to stay curious about what the market is and what's going on. I myself, truth be told, I'm still curious. If I wasn't curious, I would have left the business a long time ago. But my strength has never been pre-construction, new development. I've always been, existing sales, existing properties. And, I've had the opportunity over the years to sell, some pre-construction, new development here. And there's, I am not, I would say what's what I'm looking for? I can't think of the word right now, but when it comes to the new construction and new development, I'm lacking a little bit. And that's why, I appreciate it when I pick up the phone to you, because hey, wait a second. I know an agent in my office who has studied these properties, who has gone to them, and let me get his impression. Let me call Daniel. We've been on the phone with a client of mine when I was sitting with the breakfast at him, when we were talking about, pre-construction, and I said, you know what? Let me get Daniel. I have an agent in my office. Let me get Daniel on the phone. And you were gracious. You were great. You gave a really good amount of information. So, I mean, when you're looking at the properties or these new construction deals, are you trying to project? Do you try to project what they think the future value of these properties are going to be when they're completed?
Oh yeah, that's a huge element of it, actually. And This is not something that the sales center can offer that information.
No, they can't. Right.
But what we can do as an advisor, and this is our, out of that title we carry, Global Real Estate Advisor, the advisor portion of that title really comes into play when evaluating these opportunities as an investment play.
Right.
So location obviously is a big one. And then quality of what the developer is going to deliver is another one. And then quality of the materials provided is another element to it.
Sure.
But knowing what's going on in the market, knowing what's in the pipeline in terms of other projects, and then also knowing the developer's history on what they have done before and what numbers they have produced before. Like 100%. Terra Group, for example, they have like Park Grove and Coconut Grove that's done 88% resale over original purchase. And I believe the percentage is close to also 88% at 87 Park, which is another Terra project, the Renzo Piano design project. These values are, of course, historical, but if you look at that and you look what that developer is doing now with other projects, they're really reducing density where they build. And like Park Grove and Coconut Grove, for example, I think they had awarded density of like 400 units and they produced like 100 units or whatever the number was. I can't remember right now, but they purposefully reduced the amount of density in order to elevate the privacy level and sort of the luxury level of people moving from large homes into like 3,500 square foot condos that are essentially a large home also. They're just laid out differently. So even though they had the density, they were creating scarcity in some way, by building less than what they're allotted for.
So then I guess, by creating that kind of scarcity, it creates a demand for that property. Would you say? I mean, that's an exclusive property.
If you're used to living in a single family home, let's just say hypothetically a 4,000, 5,000 square foot home with a large property, you don't have neighbors on top of you if that's the situation. And if you're moving into a condo project like Park Grove that has 3 towers and not so many units between those towers, it's not going to be very crowded.
Right.
And that's been successful for that scenario. Then the flip side of things in terms of investment scenarios, you might have a building with 100 units and very small condos. But in terms of something like Ella, Miami Beach, they're going to have short-term rentals allowable, 2-night minimum. So you could own a small studio there and have it rented out 3 times a week, like essentially as like a hotel suite, and it's all managed for you.
Right.
So these are different. Yeah, and those units, they'll increase in value, but they're not going to exponentially increase. What you're going to get is the cash flow from them. So that's another investment perspective that's interesting to offer to clientele.
Yeah. I mean, on the investment side, we got to be careful sometimes, as far as, especially something like Ella or any of the other properties that have that hotel condo component to it. It's like, well, yeah, you can make money, but we also have to stress you could not make money too. Is the idea is really to cover your expenses at that, cover the association fees, cover your property taxes, cover your insurance. And then, if that's covering those expenses, then you're doing okay. You're doing well, as hopefully you're getting also the appreciation in the property, which is going to happen, happens naturally. So you've gone up and down the coast of South Florida, from Palm Beach County down to Miami-Dade County. You've looked at a lot of these different projects. Are there areas or sections or some of these projects that stand out more to you and say, oh, you know what, that's really something special, or that's a special area?
I mean, West Palm Beach is very interesting at the moment. There are quite a few projects active there right now. The one that we're representing, which is called Alba, they just had their top off celebration last week. And that is a really interesting project in that it's going to be delivered earlier than any other project in West Palm Beach. And it's also physically on the water, whereas a lot of the other projects, they're in front of the water, but they have a roadway in between them, which is a small difference. But still, if you have a boat picking you up and you can privately walk onto your dock and then onto the vessel versus crossing the street and, whatever, it's not these are luxury problems at the end of the day for these types of units. But yeah, that's a nice offering there. But there is quite a few projects underway there that are all very nice.
Right.
Back to referencing the Park Grove project with not so many units, I tend to really be more interested in the projects that have less units, just in terms of an exclusivity play. And it's specifically for end users as well. Like back to the moving from a single family home into a condo, it's a little shocking if you move in somewhere and there's 400 units. That means 400 neighbors, and that means a lot of elevator activity and things like that. So
got it. So you like the Palm Beach, you like that a lot. You like Alba. Are there any other pockets or areas that you're like, oh, this is a nice spot. This is where someone should seriously consider buying in, as far as pre-construction?
Yeah, there's so many different offerings out on the market now. And it's, back to what I mentioned before about being an advisor. It's like taking what the client's looking for, where the client might like to be, what sort of activity in the building the client would be open to in terms of quantity of neighbors and things like that. It really is very dependent on what someone's looking for. So it's hard to just narrow it down to, just a new project that's new and interesting. I mean, they all have different things. Like South Flagler House in West Palm Beach is like mansions in the sky, like a Robert A.M. Stern project, which is enormous spaces. And they have, mansion-like amenities inside the units, like a large butler's pantry, a chef's kitchen, a proper kitchen, and like guest rooms that are not within earshot away from the living space. So it's, these are very nice things for people who like to live privately. And then you could move into something like, I don't know, another project with like 400 units where it's just very busy, like in West Palm Beach, to give Palm Beach another shout out there. Olar is a beautiful project, 2 towers with a third tower, and that's going to be like this 400 unit type of thing. I think it's 377 units, something like that, and a full acre of amenities.
Wow.
For the buildings to share. So this is definitely more geared towards, likely people coming from the Northeast to spend some time at a place like that and be involved in that community, and the community being actually the building itself.
Right. Yeah. Self-contained. They have lots. They can keep themselves pretty busy, and enjoy themselves.
Those places have like a lot of amenities, a lot of things for you to do to be self-contained. So that's another way of looking at it also.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely those pluses. Yeah. It's like when, in the early 2000s, there was a big boom here, as far as, pre-construction. And that was kind of like the Wild West days, because, Miami was really quiet for those areas. South Florida was quiet in general. It was just, we had a normal appreciation. We had a couple of buildings here and there new, but like early 2000s, things like the lid got blown off, especially when a company like Related came in and started building. And, when I remember those days, and it was interesting pricing then. If a building came out like pre-construction, $250 a square foot, $250 a square foot, Daniel. I don't know when was the last time I heard $250 a square foot on pre-construction.
No.
It was probably 2001. But, for instance, like a building is like One Miami, which is in downtown Miami, if you're familiar with it. And that has one of the most beautiful spots right there on the river, on the downtown side. Views are unbelievable. And I remember those were selling around $250 to $300 a square foot. But those times, in a lot of those projects, the contract holder was able to flip the contract while the building was being built. And these units would be flipped several times before closing. And that was some kind of, arbitrage that was going on then. Yeah. It was really the Wild West days. And then finally those days came to an end. And then I remember, units, when you start, projects would come and present, oh, we're $400 a square foot. And you're like, what? $400 a square foot? And $500, $600, $1,000. And you're like, we couldn't comprehend it, because it was like, well, wait a second, what happened to $250 a square foot? And it was just amazing, the acceleration of how the pricing has changed so quickly. And really, it's 2025. Yeah, okay, 25 years or so. It's really not a long time in the span of history. In Florida and Miami, it's it's short, or we have these spurts. But it was people talk about. I remember Il Villaggio in South Beach. So they were, when that builder started there, this was the Brazilian developer for it, and they were selling at $1,000 a square foot pre-construction, somewhere around 1,000. It was maybe 900, somewhere around there, 1,000, and that was unheard of. This is even before 2000, and people couldn't comprehend it. And the way they were doing it, but they were selling as we call it back then, decorator ready, meaning you basically got bare floors, yeah. And the only place that had flooring was the kitchen and the bathrooms, and that was it. So they call it decorator ready. And no one really, that's never going to work. It's never going to work. But they proved proof of concept. It worked. They got the buyers. They created the buzz. They created the excitement about it. Then you start, you see this development in South Beach. From there, you got Il Villaggio. You got, the building next door, which is the Graves building. And then you start having these architects come into play, like Kobe Karp and these other, like Chad Oppenheimer, and some people from New York come down. And then you get south of Fifth and get Continuum. And they weren't at $1,000 pre-construction then, but they were, they were high. I mean, people did very well with those. But it was like the concept, selling. Miami Beach, Miami, South Florida went from like these 400 unit buildings which were marketed in the 70s and in the 80s to more the retiree set. Now you were trying to market to the second home buyers, I think, more so then. And those are relocating from elsewhere, from South America, North, other places within the United States or outside the United States. And that's when the concept, I think, of luxury, that's when we got into the luxury development side. And
Now that's what we mostly see. We see a lot of that. That's all we see. And where you're seeing, like you said, $4,000 a square foot. You and I went to go look at the Ritz-Carlton South Beach, were they at 4,000 a square foot or something like that? And was it
more or less starting? Yeah.
Was it the Shore Club or Rosewood where they saw the supposed number on that was supposed to be about $10,000 a square foot?
Yeah. Well, the premium residences in that building that were like really with the ultimate position in the building, we're up to 10,000 a foot. Yeah.
Which is amazing. I mean, this is unheard of numbers, but that just shows you how the market in South Florida has transitioned in such a way that now it's becoming super luxury and catering to that very small. You can see I don't know if you can see on the camera. I'm trying to make it small side. Like now this, before it used to be like wide, and now it's like this, which God bless anyone who can afford it. I mean, and good for us, real estate agents who get those customers and clients to work with. So if as a client, I came to you and said, Daniel, I really want to find something on the beach, new construction, or even in Brickell or elsewhere, what would be your number one? What's your number one go-to now, today?
For the beach or Brickell?
Or anywhere. Just give me, we know in Palm Beach, you love Alba. That's one of your favorites. You have any in Broward? Let's go down the coast in Broward County.
In Broward County, another one we launched actually, El Sereno, or just Sereno, and that's got a lot of nice lifestyle perks involved, ball on the roof and things like that. And it's very well located, really between the intercoastal and the ocean.
And I think what people don't realize about that, if you're not familiar with that property, it's on Sunrise Boulevard, and it's across the street from a state park. And no one's building on that state park, so you have views unlimited, at least on the north side.
Views forever, basically.
Yeah,
which is another thing that's good for identifying these things. That's the same thing that happened with 87 Park, actually.
The views out, absolutely. Yeah. Southern views. Yeah, there's a park right next door to City Park from Miami Beach. Yeah, those views are key, I think. And then people are looking for that. When you're looking for, not to be obstructed, that's something, I think as advisors, we need to point out to them. So Broward, you like Serrano.
Yeah. And then moving down towards the beach, and on the beach, definitely, between for sure the Rosewood and the Ritz-Carlton there, I think those units are incredible. There's also the Paragon, which is a very interesting shaped building. I mean, essentially it's like a bunch of squares that have been turned by 90 degrees, and they have these spaces with incredible views. And some of the floor plans are actually so well done that you walk in and you have these great spaces, and every unit has great views. So that's a really nice thing too. Obviously that's very beach living. You're in the 50s on Miami Beach, there,
mid-beach,
in terms of the location of the block.
And also right next door, you have space between there because there's a public parking spot place, which is also public access to the beach. So that's public space. Again, view corridors is something that, definitely has.
Definitely. And then down into Brickell, of course, we have Dolce & Gabbana, which is incredible. I mean, this is much more of let's say Manhattan feel in terms of buildings being all around you and also being a super tall. That one's by JDS. And if you look at their track record of having done 111 West 57th, the Steinway Tower in New York City, they're bringing their whole team down here in order to execute on these projects. This is huge. And those projects they've done in New York, they are super tall and they are super luxurious, and they are on Billionaires Row. I mean, in terms of pedigree of what's going to be delivered there, I mean, you have no doubt this is going to be an incredibly well done project.
Again, you talked about earlier about the strength of the developer. So, that's the reputation of the developer too. So we have, obviously, not just South Florida developers. We have people, developers coming from New York, elsewhere around the country, and also outside the country as well. Also, some really well-known foreign developers too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's really incredible what they're doing. I mean, another one in Brickell, which I find really interesting and incredible as well, is the Mandarin Oriental on Brickell Key.
Yes.
Considering the Mandarin Oriental that stands there now, which is going to be taken down shortly, I think it's only 25 years old, this building.
I think I kind of remember when it was built. Now I'm going to age myself. Yeah,
Wasn't it built in the year 2000 or something like that?
I think around then. Yeah, and that created a lot of buzz when it opened up. That was like, wow. I think because it was not just, it was, I think, the first 4-star hotel in Miami, and which is incredible to say. Like, wow, there was no 4 stars. No, we had a lot of 3 stars and 2 stars, but no 4 stars. Yeah. And I mean, the 5 stars obviously really, that's the top of the top, and those are hard to come by. But a 4-star was really something monumental to get here. And yeah, I think it's around 2000. If I'm not, I think you're right.
Yeah, and that, in terms of developer, that was developed by Swire, and Swire is also doing the new Mandarin Oriental.
Yeah. One thing about Swire, I'll give them credit. Swire never rushes to the door. They're always very well planned out. They're a Hong Kong based company. They've been in South Florida. They really are responsible for most of the development on Brickell Key. And that's, a 30, 40 year, span. And then they built also, let's give them credit. They did the city, Brickell
City Center. Yep.
And they're very deliberate in what they do. So if anyone ever wants to feel comfortable with a developer, Swire is probably one of the best, because they are conservative when it comes to what they do. And hey, and they'll cancel a project if they say, hey, it's just not working right now. We're going to wait, which they've done in the past, and they've done recently too. And they're smart about it. So, buyers want something comfortable. Swire is really about as comfortable as one can get with a developer, because credit to them. They do it right. They're never rushing. They're never following the pack necessarily. They know what they're doing and how to do it.
Yeah, and if you visit their sales center right now, it's right on the position of where the building is going to be on Brickell Key.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's just incredible. Like, even going into these developers, and a lot of them have them now too, like these rooms with these massive screens where they can really immerse you into what the views are going to be like.
Right.
Not to mention the VR headset tours that they give at Dolce & Gabbana, things like that. But yeah, you're really, purchasing this intangible. It's like really becomes a lot more tangible when you get these, not just a drone shot that you can look at on a photo, but like bringing you into this immersive screen where you can actually look around and see everything. And it really gives a reality to it for, a lot of these buyers. They don't have a visualization ability in order to see exactly what they're getting. Like, some people have that, some people don't, but
the technology on that and the presentation side is amazing right now. How it's exploded and how it's leapfrogged in the last few years. Look, it used to be like, here's a floor plan, choose. That was it. Maybe you had a model of the building and that was about it. But then technology has progressed. We've gotten from, you have these 3D floor plans where you could see, which then you can see on a screen and visualize a little bit better. But now the VR, that's a game changer, because now you can actually walk around the property.
Yeah, and actually, you and I are overdue for a tour at ITEX to go look at the live floor plan. So that's essentially wearing a headset, walking the floor plan in a warehouse, where when you take the headset off, the floor plan is projected onto the floor from the ceiling. So you're really as much physically in the space as you can be. I mean, other than you're not going to bump into any walls, but you can see where they are. Like, it's really amazing what they've done. I mean, another thing that developers have done, especially in Florida, is all this branded residences, which has really exploded. Like, almost anything with a brand is getting a huge amount of attention, a huge marketing boost, and a huge 100%. Level of interest and success. It's really incredible.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, the back of the day, just buildings had names. That's it. It was a name, like One Miami, or Brickell Key 1, 2, 3, something like that. Or they had like, all these different names. And then I try to think who were one of the first, to come in with the brand. You had the W in South Beach, you had the Ritz in Bal Harbor.
Yeah, that was like hotel brands. But then you have something like the Porsche Tower, which
Porsche Design.
Maybe the first one, the Porsche Design Tower. And Porsche Design is a brand separate of Porsche.
From Porsche. That's right. People don't know that. Yeah. A lot of people don't realize this. They're two separate entities. But yeah, I think you're correct. I think it was Porsche Design, maybe the first one. And obviously that's a super unique building. And now they're going to do the Bentley, which is going to be even more unique and more interesting. All these buildings get more interesting. It's like, how do you outdo the next one now? It's like, it's a race to, like, how crazy can the building get? What can you do? What more can you make it? And I mean, it's interesting. I mean, look, having grown up here, we've gone from the rectangle box or the square, and we have all these, curves and, spires, and it says all these different architectural designs, and, credit to the architects being, finally breaking out of the box, figuratively and literally, and designing things that are really impressive. And obviously, when you're catering to a certain buyer group, they want something different. They want that uniqueness and to go along.
Yeah, they want
with
the wow
purchase.
factor.
100%.
What's so cool about that Porsche tower is that you can have your vehicle parked basically in your condo up at level. And Bentley's doing the same, but in some of the units there even have 4-car parking in the unit, which is incredible.
Right.
And it's kind of a funny thing because when you look at those units and you look at the price per square foot, if you calculate it to include the parking area, 4 vehicle parking is like an extra over 1,000 square feet required.
Yep.
So they can justify their high square footage price based on all this bonus square footage, essentially. But it's a very cool thing, and especially in terms of privacy, driving into your car, like being in your vehicle, driving into your unit, parking at home at level. It couldn't be more private than that, being, living in a multi-unit building. So it's really incredible what they've done with that.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. These are just crazy. It blows the mind, it's like, wow,
a lot of the owners at Porsche are the buyers at Bentley because they know, they love the concept, and now they want to try the new version of it, which is a little bit
super unique. Yeah. Yeah. It's one of the probably the most unique of all the developments that are being built now, because it's such a rarity to have these, what do you call it, the car elevators and these car garages. The Deservator, which they actually, credit to them, they came up with their own name for it. And it was like very few buildings that have this, worldwide. So it's a very unique proposition. And it's a unique, a very unique buyer. There's really, truly, there's something for everyone now. Whoever's, shopping in that luxury, development. There's the St. Regis, there's the Ritz, there's Armani, there's Porsche Design, there's Bentley. There's the Mandrion. Well,
these hotel branded residences actually are really fantastic because you have, if it's residential only, then you have all the hotel amenities, but it is your home and there's no hotel guests. So there's no like mixture of transient guests versus permanent residents or guests of those residents.
There's a standard that they have to uphold too.
Yeah, exactly. And people can take advantage of all the services or not. It's really a very nice way to do it. So, you're paying for it either way. So,
I'm a fan of the Ritz. I've had an opportunity to sell at the Ritz in Pompano Beach, which I think was one of the best deals available at one point. You were able to buy it for under 200. Pre-construction, and their buildings are coming up, and they still have a few units left. But pre-construction, when I sold, there was off the paper, there was no floor plans really. And you were getting under $2,000 a square foot, which is now it's not possible. Even in Pompano Beach now, it's not possible. It's very hard to come by on new construction.
Yeah.
But credit to those buyers who get in early. They have the foresight to like, oh, you know what? I like this product. I like the location. Let's do it. And I think that's the thing about pre-construction is that the buyer has to be willing to, wait and be patient for the property to be built and take a leap of faith in a way and say, oh, all right, we're either selling it through VR or you're selling off paper, off the floor plan. And, they're taking that leap of faith and they're trusting in us and they're trusting in the developer and trusting in the brand the developer is putting out there. So these are a lot of things that we have to take in consideration when we're recommending, the next, pre-construction or property to any buyer or sell. And also sellers will advise them as well. So tell me, what you have for sale. I know you got something in Edgewater, which I'm a fan of, and that's a neighborhood we did not really talk about, but Edgewater is, I think, pound for pound, dollar for dollar, is one of the best neighborhoods in South Florida and in Miami proper.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And in terms of new development there, Villa Miami, which is the same development group that built 1000 Museum, the Zaha Hadid Tower.
Yeah.
Villa Miami now has Carbone Group, major food group involved, and it's going to have a whole tie-in to all their locations worldwide even. But that's a beautiful tower, and that's half floor and full floor residences. And they have there's a little cut in the shoreline there. So you do have a separation between buildings because essentially
it's on the U. Yeah.
Yeah. And that whole frontage of Edgewater eventually is going to be full of these tall buildings. But yeah, the listing that we do have over there is at the Elysee Tower, which is at 788 Northeast 23rd Street. And that's a beautiful tower. It's 56, 57 floors in total height. We have a unit on the 38th floor facing southeast, flow through all the way to the west, 3966 square feet. We're listing at $1,575 a foot, which is $6,250,000. 5-bedroom, 5.5 bath. One of the bedrooms is converted to a den, and you have just a beautiful layout. And that building is very interesting because you have some of the units have a very wide living space, which our unit does have that. Mm-hmm. And then other ones are, let's say in the taller levels, they're a little bit longer. So they have a little bit less square footage upstairs, but you have a lot of space in these units regardless. And they're all half floor except for the penthouse, which is 2 or 3 floors. Wow. And yeah, talking about value, pound for pound, $1,575 a foot for a completely and fully turnkey condo that's impeccably finished and furnished and everything's included. That's incredible.
I got to see it. Yeah.
Yeah, and you came to see it. You saw.
I came to see it. It's beautiful. It is one of the nicest properties I've seen in a long time. I mean, the finishes are tremendous, excellent taste by the owners, and the views are, I don't know what's the best word to use? Insane. They're just
views are insane. Yeah, you get a spread all the way from, you can see all the way up to Las Olas, all the way down to Brickell Key and anything that's there. And then west, you can see all the way to the airport if you want to see planes taking off, but no shortage of glitter at night and
you will not get bored.
Boat traffic in the day. It's just a mansion in the sky. It's
one will not get bored watching and looking at those views. I mean, that's the one thing about Edgewater is that you have that, especially the buildings fronting the bay there. The views are unlimited because you see all the way across the bay into Miami Beach, the ocean. These are unmatched. In my opinion, I think they're unmatched in any area in South Florida. I mean, you have Brickell. Brickell's built up. Very few buildings, unless you're on the water side, you're close up against the bay, have those views. And I think this, personally, people, if you're listening and watching this, Edgewater is really, I think, a tremendous value for those, especially if you're looking to buy pre-construction or existing, because the views are just not going to go away there. That is, especially if you have the east view or you're on the east side of the building. No, it's unbelievable. Really. Yeah. So you have that, Elysee, and then anything else you have for sale? It's on site.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, we have actually a really great unit over at the Aston Martin Tower, which is 300 Biscayne Boulevard Way. We have a unit on the 22nd floor in the 05 line at 1,699 square feet. It's a 2-bed, 3.5 bathroom with a den. So that's a very nice value as well. We're at $3.1 million in there. We do have a lot of units for sale in the building, and the developer is still selling units also. But that's a great value as well, because that building, everything is brand new. They went very, very high level on the finishes all throughout. It even featured the bull-top kitchen as a standard offered product in there.
That's excellent. Yeah.
If you were to go to the bull-top showroom and order a kitchen yourself, I mean, you're not getting out of there for less than $150,000. So
wow.
These are huge benefits to have in terms of quality that's put into a project. And that building does have quite a few units, over 300 units, but their amenities are next level. And their location, it's very interesting. You're right on the Miami River. You have a Whole Foods, a very short walk away from there. And you have, waterfront views for days. It's really a beautiful spot.
Yeah, it's an interesting spot there too. Yeah, because that's in the middle of the downtown core for Miami. And, historically there wasn't really any development there. And now the development's happened in the last, since One Miami, but really started taking off probably in the last 10 years. The development there, that side, maybe a little bit longer, but having the Whole Foods, having those amenities helps bring people into the core to live there and be part of the city, which wasn't there. I mean, it was never there for my whole, I've lived here my whole life. It was not there before. Same thing with Brickell. And once in the Brickell core, there was nothing. It was all south of Brickell. and beyond, or you're in the suburbs, and the Brickell business district and downtown Miami, basically you would roll up, come 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you roll up the sidewalks and no one's there.
Yeah, exactly. No, and even since I've started traveling here on my own, in the last 15 years, I've seen a huge difference in that as well.
Yeah, it's tremendous. The acceleration here is tremendous. One of my brothers always said, Miami or South Florida in particular, that every 30 years, we tear it down, pave it over, and build again. And I never really thought, I didn't really, buy into it until I got maybe a little bit older, especially in the last 20 years here. And even less than that, he's right. I mean, it's truly, South Florida is truly like that. It's just, we just keep moving forward and forward. It's like, there's no look. Once in a while we're looking back, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. But now let's go do this. This is going to be cooler. Miami definitely has that, that since maybe because we're a new city still, technically, that everything is always changing and always want to be on a change here, which is good. I mean, there's maybe sometimes some bad, but I mean, the good thing is that it's always pushing ahead, which is nice.
Yeah, and there's always been an incredible energy in Miami. I mean, we would come down here traveling for work things. My wife's in the art business, so we would always come down to Art Basel, and so we were always here like in December. And every time you're here, at least when we were here, there would always be a moment during a trip like that where we would say, like, why don't we live here? And that's really kind of part of what brought us down here. Right. And now we do. And you still feel that magic all the time. So there you go, the Magic City.
Magic City. There you go, the Magic City. Yeah. All right, just to wrap it up. So how do we find you? What's your socials? What's your, your best way to get with you? They especially want to reach out to you and say, hey, I want to see that, at least say, listing. I want to see that, Aston Martin. I want to talk about new construction. How do we get with you, Daniel?
Well, real simple on Instagram. It's just my first and last name at Daniel Fisker. And then that's easy. Course, I'm available on the One Sotheby's International Realty website as Daniel Fisker also. And, I'm sure we'll post my credentials.
Yeah, it'll be posted. Yeah. It'll be in the bio
video here. And happy to receive any questions, comments, feedback, any of it. I'm happy to help with it.
I appreciate you taking the time today. I know you got a hectic schedule with the kids and also the business. So I appreciate you taking the time and talking to us today and bringing your expertise, especially on the new construction side. It's really helpful. All right, Daniel, we'll talk later. I definitely will probably see you some point this week. But anyway, I appreciate you coming on and taking your time. This has been the Krinzman Property Playbook. I'm Matthew Krinzman, and my guest today was Daniel Fisker. Everyone, have a great day, great evening. Whenever you're watching this, please hit subscribe, give us a like, give us a comment, hit us back. We'd like to hear from you. Thank you.
That's it for today's episode of the Krinzman Property Playbook. I hope you've gained some valuable insights and feel inspired to take your next steps in the real estate game. If you're ready to make a move or need expert guidance, let's connect. Whether you're buying, selling, or looking to invest, I'm here to help you navigate the South Florida market with confidence. You can reach out to me directly through my website or on social media. Let's get the conversation started and make your real estate goals a reality. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time on the Krinzman Property Playbook.